Hey everybody, welcome back to NikkiT Live. I'm your host, Nick Taylor, and today I am hanging out with Keith Kurak. Keith, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing all right.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I guess before we kind of dig into things, for folks who might not know who you are, uh, who is Keith, the legend, the myth? I don't know. I'm gonna keep throwing out acronyms, or not acronyms, adjectives.
I definitely am not a legend. I am live right here. The myths have been debunked. I exist. What am I? A great existential question. No, so I like presently in terms of work type things, I'm the developer success engineering manager at Expo. Expo, how do you describe Expo? We're like the React Native people. We make tools and services for React Native projects. We're now the official like first framework for React Native, or first pre-built framework, I should say.
Okay.
I have a history as a mobile developer. Prior to
Oh,
joining
okay.
Expo, I had my previous job was at a health care engagement startup, and my first job was to rewrite their apps from Cordova to React Native with as little supervision as possible.
Okay.
So I did that for 5 years. I glommed on to Expo Tools pretty early in their origin
Okay.
because I was very intimidated about my new job, and even for the limited number of things they did back then, that would have been like 7 years ago now. They still simplified a ton of things.
Okay.
And then I kept growing up with the tools, and then eventually got over here. Um, Gosh, thinking even before that, I kind of always had a little bit of a session with the small screen.
Okay.
I technically started my first mobile apps were basic video games on my TI-83 graphing calculator in high school
Oh,
during
okay.
study
Okay.
hall. Uh,
Yeah.
and I actually had a very long spell with Windows Mobile, of all things,
Oh,
because I
no way.
worked in a factory, and we had those big giant scanner things. Like it's like a basically a barcode scanner built into a thing that's kind of like a phone, and it's like six
Okay.
times the thickness. And those things outlived, like Windows Mobile lived in that space for like an extra like decade compared
Oh,
to what
no
it
way.
lived in real life.
That's
Because
wild.
you would pay three times as much for these devices, and then you would get one quarter of the capabilities, and that's just what big industry did. Uh,
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's
so
awesome. Yeah. No, it's I think the price scanner is kind of like a classic thing. I remember I worked in e-commerce and it wasn't React Native, but at the time it was like the big thing was like filling up grocery baskets and you had to like scan all the items that you put in. Like that was something that we were working on. I mean, it's not a novel thing now. Like everybody probably does that. That whoever does your groceries, if you get them delivered, maybe. But that's wild. I didn't realize that Windows Mobile was used in there. So it's
I'm a little
yeah.
salty now that it's like I could have used Android. Like it was just starting to happen when I left that job. And like all that
Okay.
time I could have been learning an actual relevant skill. But
Yeah, yeah.
at
But
least I'm here now.
that's pretty wild. Like, 'cause I did a lot of ASP.NET and C Sharp like early on. So like for like a Windows mobile phone, was that Xamarin at the time then, or what was it?
No, actually it was .NET Compact Framework. So you were
Oh,
doing
okay,
C sharp, and that's actually what way it was pretty straightforward for me and the rest of my team, because actually before that I did a lot of I probably
okay,
technically still have a little more experience in Windows desktop than I do React Native. It's about
okay,
to even out in my career. But yeah, it was a pretty easy thing to port over, going from C sharp desktop to C sharp mobile, except
okay,
because it was the compact framework, because you'd be talking about devices like 16, 32, maybe 64 megs. There'd
okay,
just be
okay,
random classes that are missing. Like imagine having you have array list, but you don't have list. I can't remember the three. There was like three different like list classes, like in C
yeah,
sharp, like 2.0, and you like two of them would be missing, and you have to like guess which one is missing for whatever thing you're trying to do at the time.
okay, yeah. Well, I guess yeah, because the standard library in C Sharp is pretty comprehensive. Like, so it makes sense that they would probably want a trimmed down version. But that seems a little odd to me that like they wouldn't include like tree. Nobody talked about trees shaking back then, but like I feel like, and it was a lot different with .NET back then too, because like you used to have like the GAC, the global assembly cache, so it's like you just had this massive chunk of everything that everybody shared. So I guess maybe, yeah, I
Oh
guess they
man,
made some
take me
trade
back.
offs. Yeah, no, no, it's kind of funny because I was talking with Brandon Menick, who's over at AWS now, doing DevRel, but he actually worked on the Xamarin team and then on .NET, and he just to show how old I am too, like he had no idea what the GAC was or the global assembly cache. He's like, what? And it's like, so because later on, I haven't done any .NET since like 2016, but like later on, I think once they went open source, it's like things like you have your app, like everything's just with the app now. You don't have to rely on like a Windows server with the GAC, I guess. So, which
Right.
makes sense to ship it. But anyways, little side notes there. But you were also mentioning Cordova, which is like Phone Gap,
Oh, that's
which
right. Yeah.
I didn't work with that either because I didn't really do mobile development at the time, but I did do like some Hello Worlds with it. But that was still a pretty interesting project, and I don't know if you want to speak to that a bit because this kind of ties into like the value out of React Native and then obviously Expo after because like from what I understood, like PhoneGap was really just a web view and tacking in some things essentially. Is that essentially what it
Yeah,
was or
it's really almost you could consider it like the MVP for the concept of cross-platform mobile development in general,
yeah.
because every core you know vendor shipped control set, whatever Apple or Google shipped with Android or iOS itself,
Yeah.
included like a web view controller from the very beginning. So then you're like, oh, I could run web code in this thing. So then, Cordova, phone get. I don't understand, and obviously, like the modern variant of that, I guess, is Ionic, and I don't understand quite how
Yeah.
they all relate to each other, except they have pieces of each other. So I apologize, I don't know research there to any Ionic fans.
No worries.
But like then just building a framework on around that, and they had facilities inside of Cordova for like integrating native code that look that was like 10, 15 years ago that I used those things, so it looks a lot different
Yeah.
than I like. Our Expo modules API is a lot more straightforward. You can drop Swift and have a JavaScript API right out there for you to access additional native capabilities, but that whole kind of fundamental thing was there, that you write
Hmm.
98% of your code in JavaScript. In that case, of course, you're doing the same things you do on web,
Yeah.
in a small screen. And so, web doesn't really have like a user interface. It has like primitives, but it doesn't have like built-in controls. Like everybody kind of builds their own bespoke things out of
Yeah.
divs and spans and all these things. So your your app, you had to really go not just the extra mile, but several extra miles to make it look and feel like anything resembling a native app. Um,
Yeah.
and honestly, I was lucky. I actually worked with a designer who was like
Oh,
really good
cool.
at that. In fact, he told me at one point that he had gone to WWDC early, and I later joined his startup. That was my next job, um,
Okay.
to work with him more on the React Native app. Like he actually like went there, and like Apple guys were like, "You did that with Cordova?" So I got like a little bit of
Okay.
glimpse of like getting into the precise, like, let me get this button opacity just right so that it looks
Yeah.
pretty close. Or I spent weeks obsessing over not having a drawer animation like hitch in
Okay.
the
Yeah.
middle because it was like getting stopped in the middle of the JavaScript thread.
Okay.
I never quite succeeded, but um, that was an interesting spot. And it did make you it. Number one, it made you appreciate like the ingenuity of web development in general, because we
Oh
have,
yeah.
whether you're working inside of Cordova, to make it look like a mobile app or it behave as a mobile app, or you're working in a web, just on something designed to be viewed in your browser itself. You are trying
Hmm.
to achieve a large percentage of native look and feel, or at least you're trying to feel like your user isn't losing something by going to a website. Um,
Oh yeah.
but then it
Totally.
makes you appreciate even more React Native, where the whole conceit is that JavaScript is puppeteering the actual native primitives that are offered by iOS and Android. Like it's a view,
Yeah.
it's a text input, then it becomes a UI view on iOS and the Android view, and the
Yeah.
the list implementation are both go to very specific, table view and recycler
Hmm.
view on Android. So they actually like if Apple or Google update any of those controls, how they work, like React Native basically gets those things for free because
Okay, yeah,
it's trying to reflect onto what is the absolute native way of doing those things.
yeah. Just want to say hey to Arvin in the chat. Arvin has a question. Maybe we can get to this question a little later once we
Ooh.
dig into things. But Arvin's wondering, how do you test a mobile app running the Android emulator in a laptop? It takes a lot of memory. Kind of out of the scope of what we're kind of covering today, Arvin. But like, if you want to touch on that, go for it, Keith. But if not, we can
Shockingly,
punt on.
not terribly. Like it depends on how far we go, but I had a feeling we would actually stop here quite early.
Okay.
Which is, and I think as we actually get started into spinning up an Expo app, you'll probably see a glimpse of this quickly that I'll go into more. But
Okay.
so the number one thing you could do is you could just get more memory, which you'd have to get a new
Yeah.
laptop because all our laptops have pre-built memory now, which sucks. Um,
Yeah.
I have a pretty nice computer, and Android emulators still suck on my computer. I don't know. So I do a lot of on-device testing, and Expo
Okay.
has a lot of things that are built in to do that. So if you've gone and looked us up, you've probably found the Expo Go app on the App Store, which is kind of a
Yeah.
sandbox to start testing out like some very basic React Native functionalities. But because it's a pre-built app, it can only do so many things to actually demonstrate that. So it can like show you what a UI looks like, but it can't
Yeah.
accurately simulate your actual production app. Later
Yeah.
on, as you do it, and we'll only touch Expo Go today because we don't want to like have people. We're not going to have you live stream signing up for an account and
Okay.
waiting for a build. Maybe we could. I don't know. Honestly, we could maybe.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that would involve making sure your Apple certificates are up to date, and I don't think people want to see that. But we have a version where it's like your own personalized Expo Go called a development
Okay.
build, which if you have an Apple account, if you sign up for our service and you download the pre-built template for this, you can then say, hey, Expo Application Services, EAS, go build me a development build. And then it
Okay.
downloads you this version of your app that streams your JavaScript to your phone and lets you continuously test changes to your JavaScript. It's kind of like a
Oh, okay.
browser for native code, for your native code, I should say. So
Okay. That's
that's
super cool.
in summary how you test. And honestly, if you want to take yourself all the way through this flow, I forget if I type in links to other people see them here.
Yeah. If you
Uh,
drop them in there, it'll
yeah, here we
pop
go.
in Twitch. Yeah.
We have
Yeah.
a new
Okay.
little workflow. Oh, it's just that a moderator deleted my message.
Uh,
Oh, because I
damn
just
you,
pasted a
Nightbot.
link.
Yeah. No. 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 But it's.
This is
I
a
gotta
link
fit.
to our new onboarding.
Let
X.
me. I gotta fix Nightbot. I think here. Hold on a sec. Here. Hold on a sec. This is something I added
I got
recently,
timed
and
out.
all right, here. Let me just log in, and I'm just gonna
I won't
enable
touch
links for
anymore.
now.
I can just say it out
uh,
loud too.
okay,
Expo.new is a way you can actually it'll actually take you through the getting started workflow, and it actually like has little checkpoints where it gets you to the point where you have a development build on your platform of choice.
okay.
Um,
I was able to
there you
paste
go.
it.
That's the
It's
link to it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The side note, I have to tweak Nightbot. I saw a lot of people using it, and I was like, okay, I'll go install it, and I didn't realize it would be so aggressive. I tweaked a few things already, but the links, I think for the links, I'm just gonna allow it to just let people post links. I mean, you know, if somebody posts some kind of garbage link at some point, I'll just moderate it. That's probably a lot easier.
That was
But
kind of fun. I
yeah.
apologize to Nightbot.
Sorry, Nightbot. Yeah. But to your point about the testing experience, like I'm curious, like maybe we could do this on another stream at some point in the future, but like maybe going through the whole test flow, because like you said, there's some ceremony to make sure, like, because I didn't prepare for that, so like we like the certificates and stuff, it'd be better to have that set up to do it properly. But I think that would definitely be interesting, because I'm honestly curious, like, because I do end-to-end testing and other kinds of testing, like component testing in front end, and I'm curious like what that story is in terms of the mobile development world, because like I'm sure there's like manual testing, but I am curious about the whole automated, CI/CD pipeline in terms of testing that stuff. So
Yeah, that would be a cool future when we could do a combined like get your certificates in place, expo.new plus, and here's the one word I'll give you right now, Maestro. Maestro, and honestly, I haven't dug into Maestro a bunch yet, but my rest, other people on my team have, and apparently
Okay.
it's a really nice. It's like Cypress for mobile, but probably
Oh,
significantly
okay.
better. At least the way
I
people
didn't
describe
realize
it to
that's
me.
what it was. Okay.
It's very specific. It's very streamlined. It also, testing end-to-end testing frameworks always have like very weird hooks into things, and the hooks only get much weirder when you talk about native mobile.
Yeah.
And somehow it actually has smoothed out a lot of that, so you're not just sitting there being like, "Oh, why did it time out? Because it didn't connect the
Okay.
thing,
Okay.
or it didn't find the other thing." So
Yeah.
Maestro.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. No, we should totally do that. Um, I'm gonna switch us over to pairing view here, and just to show for folks interested in Expo, go check out expo.dev. I believe I dropped the link, but I'll drop it again. Um, yeah, I am curious about, and like we were talking briefly before the live stream, like I'm not really a mobile dev. I got a chance to hang out with the Ignite folks. Hung out with I've hung out with Jamin to look at Ignite, which is a React Native boilerplate that leans heavily on Expo, and I found it pretty easy to get up and running. And even like just getting Expo running, it's a lot less ceremony than I thought it would be for like for mobile app development. Because like I've heard just horror stories of Xcode and stuff. So like this is, I guess I have two questions. One, like when I did the live stream with Jamin, I was in VS Code, but I'm assuming people never use Xcode to build an Expo app, or like people usually
They
go in like
Yeah, the normal flow is, so we try to exploit the difference between updating native code and updating
okay,
JavaScript. Like the whole point reason why you would use React Native is because you presumably want to put like the vast majority, if not all, of your business logic in JavaScript, because you want to
yeah,
write it once for at least two platforms, and you want to write it in the lingua franca of the internet, JavaScript or TypeScript now, I
hmm
guess.
yeah,
I'm reluctantly moving over to TypeScript. I'm finally, when in Rome,
oh,
doing what
okay,
the
okay.
Romans do. Uh, but where was I going with that? Wait, what was the question again? Oh, nuts.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, just
Xcode,
editors
Xcode
for
versus
yeah,
Visual Studio. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So your most of your business logic, and if you set up your tools like you have your development build ahead of time, so you have kind of your native runtime, as we call it, kind of fixed for a while, because
yeah,
you're going to iterate through JavaScript quickly, and most teams are going to iterate through native changes slowly. So you can have kind of different setups. On an app of scale, someone's going to go into Xcode or Android Studio at some point, because you might
okay,
need to access some native API you don't need, and we have good wrappers for that with the Expo Modules API. Or
okay,
you just need to do some really tricky debugging on a native module that you're already using, that somebody else already made, or that a vendor made, or you need to wrap a
okay,
vendor's API. All they gave you was an AAR file, one of those Android compiled files, and you have to do something with that and make it work in React Native, which we have options
okay,
for.
okay,
But so on a bigger team, you can end up in a cadence where maybe you have like the native guy or the native guys or native gals, whoever, and they're the people who uh, do those changes. They manage that native code. They do the debugging, and then you could have people who are purely JavaScript, TypeScript feature developers, and
okay,
they might not ever need to have Xcode or Android Studio installed on their computer. I speaking of Ignite, I'm working in my free time on an app in the Ignite template right now, and just to
oh
like
okay,
split up my work and my personal. Yeah, I have this running on a ThinkPad I got for $200 off of eBay, like an 8-year-old ThinkPad, and I
okay,
didn't
okay,
install any native stuff on it. I just installed Visual Studio Code, a Node environment, and then my Expo tools. And
okay,
I'm doing like everything on there. I'm not touching native code ever because I'm just using pre-built stuff for it, so I don't really need to debug it. I'm just writing
okay,
JavaScript, and I'm sending build requests to EAS build, the Expo service, to do my builds for me on the cloud. Then it
yeah,
sends me back things that I can then install on my Android and my iPhone test phones, and then I can stream my code from my cheap Linux laptop to
okay,
whatever, and avoid all those things.
yeah, okay, cool, cool, cool. We're definitely gonna get into Expo Router and talking about API routes, but you brought up the ES build, and that's a paid service that Expo provides, and I feel like you know how developers are like, I'm not paid for a tool, but I'll go and spend like $40 on some bespoke coffee. Uh, I feel like, I guess like I used to work at McAfee on their password browser extension, and we had an iOS team and like an Android team, and this was like pre React Native, or maybe React Native just started and Expo had just started. Maybe this is like back in 2017, early 2018. But
Hmm.
um, like it was a bit of a process, and from what I've understood, just like headline skimming, EAS kind of like helps you manage like the certificates and all that complexity of deploying your app. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, yeah. So we try, and you can tell by the commands that you run. We try to split it between the Expo open source. So if you're running it like npx expo, you're
yeah,
using Expo open source. Or if you're installing Expo notifications, Expo, splash screen, Expo dash whatever in your library, that's the open source SDK.
yeah,
And then the EAS is the primary pillars of that are the build service. So
okay,
building your app in the cloud so you don't have to manage the Android and iOS tool chains on your computer. You can actually execute your
okay,
workflow completely without having those. And then also the update service, which allows you to update the JavaScript bundle in your
okay.
app on the store, so that you could then actually update certain parts of your code that are allowed by the App Store regulations without actually deploying another app to the App Store and going through the review process.
Oh,
That's
okay,
again
cool.
exploiting that difference between the cadence of native changes and the cadence of JavaScript changes, and also just the nature that JavaScript is interpreted code and it actually is allowed to be downloaded from the internet by an app.
Okay, that brings up another question, which I'm sure you've been asked a million times, but like if it's JavaScript, you know what I mean? Like, because like you were saying a second ago, like when you ship a new version of the app to the store, it has to get reviewed again and stuff. Uh, how good are they, or like what's the line about, like, okay, like we updated some JavaScript service and all of a sudden the app's updated because that's code that didn't need to be deployed to the app
Hmm.
store. I'm curious, like the politics and like the leeway there. If I don't know if you want to speak to that, because I feel like that's kind of a question I'd have automatically, because I'd be like, just deploy a shell and update the JavaScript forever instead, So just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, yeah. So they do have like a regulation, like for instance, the App Store regulation. We have an FAQ on our site. If you look up apps, oh, I wonder how I can find that. App Store. Let me see if I can find it. Um, might be App Store best practices. No, I'm not
Submit to
sure.
the
It's
Apple Store.
I'm blanking out. I actually looked
Oh,
it up the
publishing
other
to the
day.
App
It's in
Store, maybe. Is that it?
um no, that's not it. It's
Okay.
update regulation. Oh,
Let's see. Regulate.
yeah, this is gonna be no, it's not that. Updates
Uh,
FAQ maybe. Um, how can what
okay.
guidelines must I follow when publishing? Maybe
Okay.
okay. We mention it here. If you go to EAS update FAQ, I
Okay.
think there's a better place where we actually link to the Apple link. I won't try to belabor finding here. This isn't docs.expo.dev. I'm sorry, instead of the
Oh,
regular
okay.
website.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, I'm asking this
this
on
is
the
where.
fly, so this is I'm not throwing Keith under the bus here, but we're live searching here. Um,
Yeah, maybe App
uh,
Store best practices,
let's
Apple
see,
review
App
guide. I don't think.
Store. Okay.
I'm feeling bad.
Well,
I can't
we
find
can we,
it.
we can link to it after in there.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
we don't need to
It's
waste
in
an
one of
hour fighting it.
it's in one of our EAS update FAQs or general FAQs, but it links to the regulation. Like if you look up App Store developer guidelines on Google with and interpreted code, you would find the same
Okay.
thing I'm talking about. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
it's Apple explaining that your app is allowed to download interpreted code, and but it can't like change the purpose of the app,
Okay.
some kind of terms like that. So ultimately, like this could mean a lot of different things for a lot of different apps. So we can't really like say like for your app, because people do ask us this for my app. What
Yeah.
what's the line here? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I actually don't know. Like a lot of popular apps download like a lot of JavaScript content or like rich. You think of like a shopping app, and like
Yeah.
Can you imagine like all these scale shopping apps if they don't download things that can like dynamically show different product types that might include interpreted code? I think
Yeah.
a lot of them do it. This is why the regulation is probably still there because some like very big players do this a lot. Um,
Yeah.
what I tell people, my unofficial guideline is I can't tell you where the line is, but I can tell you if your update changed your screenshots that are published on the App Store or your
Okay.
description for that matter, you probably went too far.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And it it's understandable that it's a bit of a gray area, I guess. But yeah, no, just generally curious. This is somebody coming from just
Yeah,
like the web development world, where it's like, okay, we push to main and it's deployed.
and
That's it.
this is the rudest awakening for web. I mean, I wish we could change it more than we're. We just in our it's Apple and Google's world, and we're just living in it till extent in mobile world, and that's like probably one of the biggest adjustments coming from web is that uh, there's all these things that you have to work at. Like there's basically these like pseudo regulatory bodies that govern
Okay.
how app deployments and what's allowed on app stores
Hmm.
works, and we can't change everything, but like these workflows, like offering the capability of updates, like the development builds, being able to stream JavaScript easily to your device with as few steps as possible. A lot of that is
Yeah.
an attempt of ours to make mobile development feel copacetic with web development, to like reduce,
Yeah.
to look at that true north of like, oh, you dropped a file in a server and then you like ran that file, like how close can we get to that to mobile? And we hope over
Yeah.
time maybe maybe the EU or maybe even the DOJ will help us get a little bit closer. We can cross our fingers.
Yeah. 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 I I I can definitely see the annoyance from somebody trying to publish their app, but at the same time, just be devil's advocate, I can also kind of appreciate that these apps are getting vetted in the store, right? Like if I download something off the app store, I'm assuming it's not going to be stealing my data. Well, there's you list what they say their apps do, but I mean like, some nefarious person, just shipping something willy-nilly without anybody reviewing it. So I do understand that too. Yeah, I guess it's, you know,
Optimistic it would work like that. There have been some people who have kind of audited what's gone on there, and they police certain things harder than others. So there have been a lot
okay.
of slip throughs.
Oh, okay, okay. Cool, cool. All
That's
right.
all I have to say about that.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Cool, cool, cool. All right. Well, let's kind of dig into like this is all super fascinating, and I always love going on tangents.
Yeah, yeah.
But I kind of want to talk about the big lines that we kind of chatted about. W- like I was saying, I saw you at React Miami briefly, and then I think you were on one of our Twitter Spaces for Open Sauce.
Yep,
I think Becca had you on, and
yep.
I was
With
just curious
Betty.
to, yeah, yeah, that's right, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was just curious to dig into like Expo Router. I guess for folks who might not know what it is, maybe kind of, I guess, speak to what Expo Router is. Like, if I think if you're coming from the web development world, it's probably pretty clear what a router is. But like, I guess what makes this special? Because this is something. Is it fairly new or is it been around for a while?
I think we're drawn close to 2 years. I forget exactly. It was
Okay, so
we
it's been a
definitely
minute.
talked a lot
Okay.
about mainstreaming it at last year's AppJS 2023 in May,
Okay.
and we've been talking more about kind of the future of that. I forget when version one came out, but it was more than a
Okay.
year ago, but it might have been less than two. So like every app, web app, uh, mobile apps, whatever, has some kind of routing mechanism for showing multiple screens. But
Yeah.
Expo Router says, "Oh, what if your file system were the routes?" So a really reductive way to
Okay.
it'd be like Next.js, but for mobile.
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
but yeah, so basically, it used to be when you coded these up, you would do it all in code, and we used to do that for web too, where we would put all of our routes into some kind of function file or something like that, or some kind of class, and it would define all these things inside of code. So you
Okay.
would see some files of code, and then they would define some arbitrary structure to your app. When you go, how do you go from screen A to screen B? How do you show
Yeah.
these three screens together in a tab layout or something like that? So
Okay.
Expo Router says, let's make sure the file system actually represents that. That's the number one big thing. So we're talking about a lot
Okay.
less boilerplate. and we're talking
Okay.
about something that's visually intuitive, and especially visually intuitive for web developers who are focused on the most popular React frameworks like Next.js.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
conventions of like the different like file placeholder names, the different little like special things you can do with routes are very similar to Next.js.
Okay.
The second thing you get, this is special. Well, to how do I put these in order? Okay, so Expo Router has been designed with the idea of universal React apps as like a core, first class concept. So a
Okay.
lot of React Native before this point has been thinking more about, okay, let's get stuff on mobile. But we've always had this library called React Native Web. We've always had this
Yeah.
layer where you could actually translate a React Native app back into web, by basically doing like little like switcheroos, like switch a view for a div or switch a
Okay. Okay.
this for a div with a scroll, whatever. Um, Expo Router makes this like a very universal concept, and specifically the thing that it does that's really important to this is it has universal deep linking. So
Oh,
if you
okay.
were to spin up a Next.js app, you get like automatic, and you create a little folder structure. You get your folder structure not only represents your navigation, but it represents your URL hierarchy. So your
Yeah.
URL matches perfectly with your folder structure. Um, Mobile did not have that automatically. You could do deep linking forever, and basically you would spin up a little listener that would listen for whatever link was coming into the app. So you know when you have like those like app
Yeah.
specific links, like you register a little scheme, the operating system recognizes that, opens your app, and then it sends the rest of the payload to your app, and your app hopefully does something with it. Expo Router says, Expo Router says, oh, that payload, it's a URL that matches your navigation structure perfectly. It's the exact same URL after you get past that little scheme as if this
Okay.
was via web app. And then this really opens up the window now, like universal linking, like treating everything in your app as a deep link, um,
Okay.
works out of the box. And this enables scenarios like, say, like handoff on Apple, where you could like open a link on Safari for your web app.
Mm-hmm.
And if your web app is also your native app, because it's all in an Expo Router project, you could hand off that link to your phone, and it opens the same link in your app
Okay.
on your phone because it's the same address.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say those are the two big core things: is file-based routing and the things that it allows you to do on mobile that give us parity with web and feedback into web to give us a great universal app experience.
Okay. No, yeah, and even though I don't really do a lot of or barely do any mobile development, I used to work at Dev2, and we had a mobile app at one point. So we had an iOS app and an Android app at one point, and the iOS app, because like Dev2 is mainly a blogging platform, so it's just web views with content. But I
Hmm.
remember Fernando, my coworker, who is our iOS dev. Well, he did Android as well, but the whole deep linking thing was super complex. He had like a separate web server, I think, that detected. Okay, so you go to this link, and then there's this whole ceremony, and then there's also like, what if they don't want to open it through there anymore? Basically, even though I'm not totally familiar with the whole scenario, I know that it was a hard problem. So the fact that you add this natively to, if you're using Expo, I think that's like a big win from what I've understood of the complexities of it. So
Yeah. It's. I wrote an app without this before, and I ended up writing my own like just this crazy like Mobix class thing that would like, I called it the universal link handler. So I basically wrote this
okay.
thing that's accomplished with like 0 lines of code in Expo Router right now.
Okay, yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Okay, so that's cool. And again, like one of the compelling reasons for people to use Expo is like, I'm a React dev, I do web dev, like moving, like obviously there's still differences, but again, going with the file based routing, that it just makes the transition like a lot easier if I were to start doing mobile development. So I think that's pretty huge too. And I don't know if you want to touch on it a bit, but like because I do headline skim a lot, and I know your coworker Evan Bacon at Bacon Bricks on socials there. I believe he has like a prototype or like some alpha version of the router with RSCs, React Server Components. Is that right? Or Am I reading that
Yeah,
wrong?
so he
So,
demoed that at app.js.
okay.
So you can go look at app.js 2024 on YouTube, and you can see
Okay.
the demo of that. I mean, the really kind of fun part, not to like spoil the lead if you don't see, go watch the video later, but
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
demonstrated calling to a server, having an AI bot on the server generate a React component, and then
Oh,
React
okay.
server
Okay.
components would serve the AI generated React component back to the app.
Okay. Okay.
It was
Okay.
pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah. No. Like at my job, we have an AI component to our offering, and I've been working on the UI for that a lot too. So it is interesting. Like we dynamically load widgets and stuff. So it's pretty cool the stuff you could do with that. And I'm curious about that too because this kind of gets back to that gray area about like shipping JS over the wire because RSCs are basically like a serialized format when you're sending them the way you were just mentioning. So it's like yeah, I guess again it gets to that gray area. Like if you're just sending stuff that can generate not arbitrary UI, but like stuff you're expecting, but like it's not
Hmm.
there. So, anyways, it's
Yeah, no. The one thing I'll say to that was interesting. Is like, number one, I have no idea where the future will lead with all this stuff, but
yeah,
number two, the night before the first day of app.js, there was like a smaller meetup, and they had some talks in this more intimate setting, and one of the talks, like it kind of like I forget who did it, but why is my hair strange color? Yeah. Uh, I don't. My wife bought the bottles, and I
okay,
didn't know what was inside until I put them on. But he's like, this is not going to be a talk about React Native server components. And then he started
okay,
talking about server driven UI, and he explained how he was like kind of building like a meta language to like serve, kind of reconstruct UI components based on its API. So
okay,
server driven UI is this concept that's been around for a long time, where basically you write like a meta language that instead of describing like just the data you want to output to your app, you
yeah,
actually describe what UI you kind of want to construct. I actually did this in my past job to a very small extent. When our health engagement app Nudge, we had
okay,
these cards, we called them. They were basically like program cards where a healthcare provider, like a coach, a fitness coach, would send a program inside of a card, and it would be able to
okay,
like do like header text, paragraph text, a little tracker thing, etc. And so we wrote a little
okay,
meta language for this. So everybody, like tons of people who have done apps that try to display arbitrary content, have
yeah,
done this already. All that React server components is saying is, what if the meta language was React?
yeah, gotcha, yeah. No, no, it's yeah, it's super cool and it's like interesting times. I mean, there's yeah, who knows where things go, but yeah, it's super cool. So okay, so he's got this proof of concept or beta or not beta maybe, but like some kind of prototype showing this, and I know he's working on it still, and I imagine
Hmm.
it'll land at some point. And it's but you brought up another interesting thing, like because the few times that I've tried out like Go, not Go, why am I saying Go? Expo, like with that Ignite template, which is literally just using Expo among other things, just opinionated, but um, I haven't built a universal app. I just built like it was in the simulator, but I just built like a native app, and I guess like how decent is like the React Native web compared to like because I can understand, I can see the compelling reason to do that because again like sharing the code and stuff versus like let me go build like a remix or like a Next.js app on top of my own thing here. So like it, the only like app I'm aware of, just because I'm not in those circles really, is I think Blue Sky uses it, I believe.
Hmm.
The Yeah, yeah. I'm just kind of curious about the experience there because like I've used the Blue Sky app
Yeah,
on
yeah.
mobile and desktop, and it seems pretty decent. Like
Yeah, so yeah, our kind of goal with like universal apps is that, and especially with Expo Router kind of giving you this good pattern out of the box, is that at some point, and I think some people already choose it now, is that someone who like wants to make a website but just has in the back of their eye that maybe it'll be an app,
Yeah.
that they would just start it with the Expo starter because they get the web app for
Okay.
free,
Yeah.
or they get the web app and then they get the mobile app for basically free. And it's taken a few, there's probably like there's a few details, especially when you get into like enterprise apps. Like we're just starting to get out like tree shaking, some of those advanced web features that
Okay.
I don't still understand that well because I'm primarily a mobile developer. And I never care about scaling JavaScript. I always just care about running one bit of JavaScript on somebody's phone, and I don't care how many
Yeah.
resources
Yeah.
they're using their phone. No, I care a little bit, but so the where is I going with that? Oh, it's I'm blanking out. Where did I go with that? Oh,
For the universal apps.
how close is it? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's the experience had a quantum leap when we got mobile and web going on the same bundler. So it used to
Okay.
be that like React Native's always been centered around the Metro bundler.
Yeah.
And that always served JavaScript for mobile apps. And to make web work initially, we had to serve it on Webpack because that was kind of the mainstream thing at the time. So you would
Yeah.
run into issues where like one bundler expects one thing and one expects another. Like React Native p- packages were typically not pre-transpiled, but web packages were. So you had issues like that. And this is years ago now. Like if anybody starts
Okay.
React
Okay.
today, you won't notice that because everybody's in the same bundler. Metro works
Oh.
on
Okay.
web.
Okay.
And this shook out a lot of the differences. So now you're in a pretty good position of having a very solid UI with the standard
Okay.
components out of the box. The parts you're going to have to think about are things that don't have a great analog in web, since it is still kind of technically mobile first. Although
Yeah.
most libraries support things universally, but like for instance, like the alert
Hmm.
a little primitive that comes out of the React Native library, that's very geared towards showing like the built-in modal alert on an iOS or Android app, and it'll
Okay.
show like the little janky like JavaScript pop-up from like
Oh. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
1994 on a web browser because it's basically
Yeah. Yeah.
calling like alert. So you're gonna want to think about like certain APIs like that, maybe like an alert, maybe like a drop down. Like drop downs, you have to like you really want to kind of try totally different things on a small screen versus a big screen versus web.
Okay.
You're gonna want to think about like how do I write a proxy that then goes to the right thing. Like maybe it calls Sweet Alert
Uh,
on web, or maybe it
oh.
makes its
Okay.
own
Okay.
bespoke alert. And I was trying to think of there was another example in there, but it's blanking out a little bit to me. But it's kind of little things like that. You're gonna have to like go the last mile on the UI to make sure all these little things work right. But the core
Yeah.
stuff, like oh, I know what I was gonna go to. If you need to break out
Okay.
entirely, there's actually quite clear ways to do it. So number one,
Okay.
there's the platform primitive that you import out of React Native, and that lets you
Okay.
select is this web, is this iOS, is this Android, and then you can actually write little branches of code, and you can customize that code for the
Okay. Okay.
platform right in line. But
Okay.
if you want to ship an HTML a code file that's basically HTML or basically JSX for the web, it's got divs and spans
Hmm.
and all that, and you want that to only show on web, you can actually do like my screen .web.tsx, and that
Okay.
file will only get served on web. And then like the other, you can also do like .native.ts, you can do
Okay.
.ios.android.tsx, and so you can
So
actually
clear
split
paths.
entire files per platform.
Okay. Okay. So there's definitely escape hatches for when you need to go bespoke. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Mar Friends in the chat is saying my new CTO said that he has a lot of empathy for front end devs. You guys have to catch up every single day with all those new libraries. It's chaos. Yeah, and he's also saying they're also saying all of a sudden the claim backend is more complicated went to trash. I want to see backend Java devs trying to figure out all this mess we currently have. Yeah, it's I know a lot of people say things are complex these days in the front end landscape, which they can be, but I always kind of push back on that to say like maybe there is some complexity, but we're also building more complicated apps, and I honestly feel like it's like regardless of the job market, it's such a great time to be a developer. There's so many cool things out there and amazing things to work with because like I definitely do not envy the days of when I had to configure a gulp pipeline or like configure my webpack like I am very glad. Like, I don't know why it happened, but any job I went to, I was always the person that configured Webpack, and it's like,
Oh dang.
it's just like it's something I just don't want to do now. I could do it, but like that. Thanks to Meta Frameworks and like Expo for definitely getting rid of that cognitive load for sure. But
I will say
yeah.
it's hard to say which one's precisely more complex than others at any given moment, but I will say in my last job as a mobile developer, on my worst day, I was never envious of the back end guy.
Yeah.
That scaling to all those connections, that would freak me out. And
Yeah.
not to mention all the little caches and Marituses. And one time I was demoing something this year and I had to do a Docker container and it freaked me out because I'm just like, I just want to run JavaScript on a device. I'm a simple man. I'm just a
Yeah.
caveman. Uh,
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah. No. I think they can both be difficult. You just have to learn the things. But yeah, totally. I was wondering, we could probably jump into some code now here. I'm
yeah,
loving the
yeah.
conversation, but I'm sure some folks probably want to see some stuff.
There'll be some plenty of
Um,
conversations that come out of code here.
yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
Okay, cool. Let me just close my work here. The beauty of working in open sources, it's not a big deal to have my work showing. Okay, I just before the live stream, I just created a quick Expo app and deleted it just to make sure like I had the latest CLI and everything. But
Sweet, sweet.
just because I know sometimes, oops, here, let's go to my streams folder. Cool. All right, so I guess we might as well do this in parallel here. Let's go to expo.dev and I'll just to kind of guide people. So like there's like a
Yeah,
get
yeah.
started. Where did I see that? I guess it's the docs. Oh yeah, here.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one. Quick start.
Cool.
NPX
So
Expo,
I'll
Create Expo app, that latest.
cool. All right. Oh, hey Fuzzy, thanks for joining us in the chat. Always good to have you. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and copy this, and so this is like a pretty common thing for I think any meta frameworks or stuff like Expo these days to just have an npx create. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just make my terminal a little bigger here for folks so they can see things in action, and I'll just hit enter here. Okay, so we'll just say stream with Keith for the app name.
Yep.
Except I'm typing Leo for some reason.
That's
um,
my other secret name.
yeah, exactly. Super secret Leo. Okay, so this is just usual kinds of things: downloading some files, doing an npm install, and while that's setting up, I guess. So, what does this give you out of the box when you create a new Expo app? Like, you have some kind of template in there along with Expo, I imagine.
Yeah, so with the our latest SDK 51, we actually fully transitioned over to now the default template is
Okay,
our Expo router template. We used to kind of
okay,
offer both side by sides, and you still can. There's a dash dash template flag where you can still specify a different template. That's either
okay,
something off the internet or something you download. And if you want the old one that has like literally one file, you could
yeah,
type in blank for that, and you would get the blank. But the default is like a small Expo router sample that you can start running out of the box on Expo Go,
okay,
quickly, or a development build if you had a little more time, or on the web. So we could actually try to run it on both if you want.
yeah, sure,
Um,
cool. All right,
so have you
so
run a iOS simulator? I guess if you've done Ignite, you probably run an iOS simulator at some point on here.
yeah,
Cool.
just gonna clear something here. Yeah, so there's a couple options. I know you can do like npm run iOS. So like nr is just
You
my
did.
alias for npm run.
Oh, so
Sorry.
that's actually a different command. That's actually a different
Oh,
command.
okay. Okay.
Depends on how long ago I did Ignite actually. So the key command. I don't have it here, but we actually made stickers that actually say npx expo start.
Oh, okay.
um, because this is your gateway into all things Expo.
Okay.
So what this does, all this starts doing, and this gets back to the whole difference between native and JavaScript, slow versus fast. All it
Okay.
does is start a development server, kind of like if you were like starting like a web app, where it's
Okay.
streaming JavaScript to a URL. Um,
Yeah.
and that QR code that just flashed above the screen, that would be
Okay.
if you have Expo Go installed on your iOS or Android device. You can actually scan
Okay.
this QR code, and as long as you're on the same LAN, you can stream your app to
Oh, okay, okay,
Expo Go on your phone. Now, again, that only works as long as your dependencies match up with what's built in the Expo Go. Once you
okay,
start adding special functionality, like JavaScript libraries are fine. Like go add Lodash, go add Tanstack Query. Those are just
okay,
JavaScript that can stream over. But once you add things that add like native capabilities, like my app had HealthKit back in the day. So if I were to try
okay,
to add HealthKit, I can't add HealthKit to the Expo Go app. So that's where I built the development build.
okay.
Um,
Gotcha,
so
gotcha.
yeah, you could scan that QR code. You can also hit I to run in your iOS simulator,
Okay,
or
so
A
let's
if you
do.
really want to bear starting up an Android simulator.
Uh,
It'll
I did.
actually. Oh,
I'm
go
sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was gonna say I did install Android Studio, but I'll stick with the iOS simulator for today. But
iOS is
sorry,
a little
you're gonna go
safer.
ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was
Okay.
just
So
say, if you hit I, it's as long as it's yeah, as long as it's been used before or Expo has been installed, it should fire it up automatically. So you'll see
okay.
actually it's going there. That's a good sign. Um, in the meantime, you can actually fire more than one of these up.
Okay.
Sometimes
Got.
it's a little. It looks like it's your simulator is a little slow to start up, so that might just be what was going on because it looks like it's hanging on the black screen a little longer. Actually, try
Okay.
something over here. Go to device on the simulator. Go to device.
Oh, okay. So.
I think it's device. Restart. Oh wait, no, wait,
Okay.
oh never mind, never mind.
Oh,
No,
there it's
that was
back.
good. Good.
Okay.
I was
Just
just a
took a
little slow.
second. Okay.
That black screen had me working, and you see how it's building. It's now building iOS. The bundles are a little bit different for iOS and Android, so
Okay.
it'll build each one. It's running on iPhone now, so you have an
Okay.
Expo
Cool.
Router app. Um, at the same time, you could actually hit W, bring it back in your
Okay.
console again, and you can also open it on the web.
Okay. Oh, it opened on the wrong screen, but I'll bring it over to the other side here. Just one sec. Okay, so we got that, and let me get the simulator. Okay, so
There
we
you
got
go.
both side by
Some
side
platforms.
here.
And
Okay,
these are both set up for live reload or live refresh. So you could actually
okay,
go into your code and change a little bit on that screen and you would
okay.
see
So,
that live refresh.
so if I go to, I don't know, what's a good
Yeah.
one to
And if
go
you
to?
have if you're able to put the folder view on there, it probably could be good to see it just to
Yeah.
get the full feel of Expo Router here. Here we go.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we.
So
Okay,
yeah. Expo Router, everything that's inside the app folder is part of your route tree.
okay,
So um, at the top level, we'll see here like a few things. Number one, we'll see a layout file. We'll see this plus HTML thing, plus not found. I'll leave those to the side for a second. Um,
yeah,
but um, the layout is always just like how do you show this thing on the screen? That's where you can put like a lot of like boilerplate startup code. It's
yeah,
stuff that happens before you actually serve a screen. Then if you go into that like tabs the parentheses, this means it's a
yeah,
route group. So it's in its own separate place, but it doesn't actually show up in your URL. If I were to
yeah.
take the parentheses off of tabs, it would just be part of my URL.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And then finally, the files in there, Explore and Index, are your actual tabs. And going back to the layout file just tells Expo Router to lay these things out as tabs instead of like separate screens.
Okay,
Um,
so if I just let me just close the sidebar for a sec here, and if I just say YOLO, it should update it. So we got YOLO over here now.
yep,
And then if I come back to here, we've got YOLO in the app as well.
YOLO.
So, and that, I guess the other thing to mention too is like, that's like fast refresh from React, I guess. So it's like, it's pretty instantaneous, which is
Yeah.
super nice. Okay.
Yeah, I forget how it exactly works, but it does. It tries to do some, smart stuff to just like refresh your UI. If your if your code changes involved a bunch of like data changes, sometimes it'll often like figure out to refresh the entire app on its own, like backend data
Okay.
changes or whatever. But if you get into a weird state, like I use Mobic state tree a lot, and sometimes I get in a weird state, so I just hit the on the iOS simulator, it's like Control Command Z, I think, is what brings up the little like developer menu
Okay. On which one, sorry, you said?
on the iOS simulator.
Okay. Let me go back there. Command Z.
While you're doing that,
Or,
I'm gonna close the
oh,
window
yeah, no
here.
worries.
Close
Uh,
that.
debug
If you
device.
go, it's like command. It's Control Command Z, I think.
Oh, Control Command Z. Okay, there we go.
There it
Okay,
goes. Woo! So you can see you could do a
okay,
full reload here. You could go back and load a different app. You can. There's a little performance inspector. There's a little
Oh, okay.
element inspector. So you get some other stuff in there. You can open up a separate debugging window. It opens a Chrome window, but it's actually still running the JavaScript on the device. So it's
Oh, okay,
we
okay.
used to actually run it in Chrome years ago with the old developer debugger, and there was weird issues you could run with that. But
Okay,
it's
yeah.
it's been
So,
a long time.
okay, yeah. So, yeah. So you can debug in Chrome because, like, that. Yeah, like I mean, typically I debug stuff in VS Code now, but because like there's that remote debugging protocol, like you can debug Node apps in the browser dev tools. So I guess similar experience. Um,
Yeah, and actually that you can set up the Visual Studio Code. I forget. I wrote one of those down one time. I forget where I put it, but there is actually like a little, the special debugger commands you can give to actually do the debugging inside of Visual Studio Code as well.
yeah, I definitely do it for web development. But I'm not sure how to do it for the Expo router. But like, for example, like I can if I copy this URL and I can do say open link and you just paste it in. It's going to start up Chrome, but all of a sudden I'm going to be able to debug. So like if I come here and let me just get some real estate here. So like if we come into here and I refresh, it should, yeah, see then I'm debugging here now.
Oh, that's
Uh,
nice.
that's the web view. I don't know how to do that for the React Native,
Yeah, I think there
but
is some special. I think it's possible there's some special stuff you have to stick in one of those, like that Visual Studio config
yeah.
file that usually sets up like the it sets up
Okay.
like the debugger parameters. Like if you were to like debug a Jest unit test, it's kind of like a similar setup except different
Oh, okay,
parameters.
okay. Yeah, yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, you can come in here in the launch file, and then I wonder if,
Right. Yeah, that little launch file. Yeah.
yeah, I've only done it for web, but like you said, there's probably something you can do for the other.
Yeah.
Um,
I did a PR once to add it actually for like diagnostics somewhere and I forgot where I put it. Maybe I'll find it later. Let me try that
uh,
again. Um,
cool, cool. Sorry, Fuzzy has a question in the chat. So this is
oh
similar
yeah.
to the next app directory. Yeah, the file routing similar. Like Keith was saying, like if we come back here to the file routing, hold on a sec. You can see like the group here, like he was saying, this doesn't it doesn't become part of your URL. It's just a way to group these things. And the pluses, it's new. That came from I think that came from Svelte, that syntax,
Okay.
um, but yeah. Um, but yeah, it's basically file-based routing, fuzzy. That's what we're touching on with the Expo router. I'll
Yep.
drop a link to that if you want to
And
check that out.
and to be clear, Expo is a framework for React Native. And there's actually a React Native website actually has new documentation about frameworks. We've one of the changes to React Native was to actually define the concept of a React Native framework, which was
Okay.
released in May. I know it's somewhere off of React Native.dev. I'd have to find it, but
Yeah.
basically what's kind of been the case for years and what we've just kind of openly acknowledged is that everybody uses a framework with React Native, just like you use a framework when you type code with React. Like Next.js is a
Yeah.
framework for React. Um,
Yeah. Totally.
and if you're not using right now, Expo is the one like open source, mainstream, like everybody can use it, like framework that meets the requirements of what is a React Native framework. There
Yeah.
could be others in the future, but everybody who isn't using Expo is doing the other things you need to do when you um, when you use Expo, which is like, but they're doing it on their own. Like they're cobbling together different control native component libraries. They're creating their own build process, possibly their own over-the-air update process,
Yeah.
deployment process, all these things. So what you're really doing if you're not using Expo, you're building your own framework, um,
Hmm.
or somebody else in your company is, and
Yeah.
you're just using it all works. So Expo apps are React Native apps. Expo is a framework for React Native.
Yeah. And like you said, I saw it somewhere. I'm not sure if it was Rick Hanlon that tweeted it out or something, but like basically Expo is the recommended way
Yep.
to use React Native. And that makes sense, I think. Like, but like you said, if other players show up, they might recommend others in the future. I can't picture another one showing up anytime soon, but if it does, options.
There's a lot. I
Um,
will say there's a lot of work that goes into making a React Native framework. A lot of things have to come together, and it's not like Expo was built overnight. But
yeah, no, totally. Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. Not to get into the weeds of the history, but um, I forget. Is it Charlie who created it initially? Somebody was working at Facebook. Their name's escaping. Maybe it wasn't
yeah, Charlie
Charlie.
Cheever is
Yeah,
the
Charlie. It
founder and
is. Okay.
CEO, and James Ede is another founder as well.
Okay. Yeah. So I just remember reading about it early days. Like I think they pivoted and made it what Expo is today. I forget the whole. I got to check that out again. But yeah, it's been around for a while. Like it's been in the making for quite some time. So
Yeah. If you want a little overview of the history, if you look up Chain React 2023, I did a talk there called "Not Your Grandparents' Expo." So
okay,
you can actually get a reflection on the history as it goes from how it worked before to
okay,
how it works today.
okay, cool. Yeah, I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat for people. Um, but yeah, no, and I totally believe that a lot probably goes into making this framework. I used to work on the frameworks team at Netlify, and not building frameworks, but like supporting frameworks like Next.js, Astro, Remix, etc. And so you get a view into like what it takes to build a framework because you have to support it, and
Yeah.
it's not trivial, like so. And I imagine the whole mobile aspect, it's even potentially more complex. And you're also doing that universal app, which makes it even more complex. So, but
Yeah.
anyways,
But
yeah.
important thing to note is you don't have to buy into the entire framework. You can actually swap out individual pieces. So you can
Okay.
use just Expo open source. So you can use the Expo SDK, the modules API for tapping additional native functionality.
Okay.
And you could supply your own build pipeline. My
Oh,
old
okay.
app was actually this basically. I used updates, my own build pipeline, and the Expo SDK. Or you could the EAS update uses
Hmm.
the Expo Updates protocol, which is an open protocol.
Okay.
So you can actually implement your own update server. So like as a
Okay. Okay.
developer, like I wouldn't recommend, framework or not, I wouldn't recommend anything to anyone that like has like vendor lock-in as like this is like how you use this thing. Like
Okay.
we want smart developers to use Expo stuff because it's good, not
Hmm.
because they feel like they have no choice. So like to me, part of making it good is actually like, oh, everything like all these workflows, they work in some way, even if I have to decouple from like a monthly payment to a particular vendor. And
Yeah.
that's what you got there. You can adopt the Expo tools and go as far or not far as you want with the EAS services.
Yeah. No, and I would definitely lean on using Expo, or like I'm doing web development. Sure, I could roll my own framework, but like as an educational process, I think it would be interesting. But to actually ship production code, I probably wouldn't do that. Like
Yeah,
it's
like do you really want
you
to
know
write your own interface to the native notifications library? No,
yeah,
that's a
exactly.
lot of
Like
time.
yeah, no, totally. And like all these meta frameworks, you just want to start building something, providing value or some kind of service, and instead of getting into the weeds of like why is my page not loading. Um, so yeah, okay, cool. I guess so, like we've obviously seen like like just a high level overview of the router here. I think probably most people in the chat, like we were talking about, like people are familiar in general with the file based routing, so I think this is easy to grok. um, I still find the group stuff, like the syntax, a little weird, but this is in web frameworks too now, so it's just a question of recognizing it and understanding it. But um, I guess like if we wanted to add a new page here, so like right now I've got home and explore, like I could just copy this one here, and I don't know, we'll call it like YOLO.tsx, and then I'll just come here and call it YOLO screen, and I'm just gonna like change a few things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I guess
And you'll
okay,
see that the
parallax will
tab,
be
the extra tab already popped up on your web view there.
okay. So this is what I was gonna ask. Like, do I need to do that? And that the answer is no. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's already nice. Okay, so that's cool. So that, I guess that's just iterating over the routes, that particular component.
Yeah, so that layout file inside the tabs group says that this everything in this folder at this level is going to be
Okay.
another tab. So the
Okay.
default layout for things is actually we call it a stack. So it's like screen on top of screen on top of screen, like you're going to a new page in a web
Okay.
app. And but so you have to specify a special layout, a tab layout, to get tabs.
Okay.
So what I actually wanted to do in this little exercise of kind of copying the files, I wanted to do one more, which is
Yep.
copy YOLO and put it outside of tabs.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Let's do. Oh, I copied the wrong one, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, either one. I mean, whatever you call it. YOLO 2.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Okay. Cool. So we'll pull it out here. Move. Okay, that should update
Yep.
references, and then we'll just call it YOLO 2, like you said. Okay. Cool.
Yep. Now, if
Yeah.
you go to your URL and you just type in slash YOLO 2, it should take you to that page.
Okay. Yeah. It did.
Yay!
Okay.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so because we have like two screens at that top level, like the default route, like Expo Router is always looking for the first index it can find. It can find the first index by drilling into that group, and that group is
Okay.
allowed it's allowed to or drill into it because it's not an actual route. Those parentheses say it's not a real route; it's just an arbitrary grouping, so we can define
Okay.
these things as tabs. And then like anything on the else on the top level becomes like off of index, like index is like
Okay.
the implicit nothing after the URL, and then you add YOLO 2, and now you're going to the YOLO 2 page.
Okay.
Um,
And then, like, if we do, this is going to give a 404, so this goes to the not found page.
yep,
And
exactly.
then the HTML
That's
one,
um
that's just
that's boilerplate for serving your web page, so you can actually define what like index.html actually looks like because everything
okay.
that's actually part of your routes is going into something inside of that body.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. No, that's super cool. And I think I toast my emulator? I did. Let's do
No problem.
yeah, I think let me just close that. Let's bring it back. Um,
Just hit yeah. Oh, you don't have to stop the server. You can just hit I again.
oh, okay. Oh, okay.
But you can start the
Today.
server. The server should go fast the next time. There's caching in
Okay.
there.
Okay. I open iOS simulator. Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Um, yeah. No. So what one? That's pretty nice. Like in terms of the template that you ship with, that it already provides the additional pages on the bottom, because that was like something that I noticed in the, maybe this will come in the newer Ignite, but like template that, or yeah, the Ignite template they have, because when I added a new page, I had it to I had to go and then find, like, I basically had to figure out, okay, they have this icon with this link down there, and then I had to create one for my new page. Whereas with the Expo router, it's in the template, obviously, because I
Yeah.
saw the code there. But that's a nice value add, like not having to worry about that out of the box.
Speaking of Ignite, I've had a link in my clipboard for a half hour and I've been waiting for when to post it. Um, this is a link. Frank, the the uh, steward of Ignite, or one of them,
Okay, yeah.
uh, he he's been working on a recipe that has now become a flag inside of Ignite to make it work with Expo Router. I'm
Okay,
actually like we use Frank and I and also Elliot Infinite Red. We did a workshop at Chain React just a
okay.
few weeks ago, and we actually used the Expo Routerfied version of the Ignite template for our entire
Oh, okay.
workshop. So
That's
you can
cool.
convert it, and they're working on making that a mainstream option. It's still a little experimental, but there, even if you've already created an Ignite app, if you go
Yeah.
to the Infinite Red cookbook, which is kind of like their little recipes that work really well with the Ignite template, there's a
Okay.
recipe for Expo Router that you can
Okay.
follow to migrate your code over.
Oh, cool. I'll go ahead and drop that into. Oh, you got ads, Fuzzy? Sorry. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'll drop that over on YouTube too. Okay, no, that's super cool. But yeah, I guess just getting back to the template, like out of the box, like having being, I consider myself like mainly more web developer, like the cognitive load to just do that. I know we're doing something trivial right now, just adding a page and not really doing anything super like complex, but it was nice that I got that out of the box right away. And
Yeah. Yeah. The cognitive, I still feel the cognitive load like 7 years after creating my first screen on React Native, so I feel that deeply.
Yeah. Well, I guess you were talking about stacks before, and I am curious about this because like when you're in the web-based world and you navigate to another page, like it just it changes to the page, or if it's single page or application or like hybrid where it just transitions to the next page, it it doesn't stack things like you're saying. And can you kind of speak to the stack a bit because that's like more of a mobile concept in terms of like for
Yeah,
folks who might not be aware of that.
yeah, it basically mimics the so the navigation libraries like Expo Router is built on the foundation of React Navigation, which is the same navigation library that default Ignite uses. So it's
Okay.
just a set of like, here is a container with all your screens. Here's a tab container. Here's a stack container. Just all these building blocks that you can build these things in code. That's what's happening behind the scenes. Is that it's actually using React Navigation, and React Navigation in terms of JavaScript is mimicking just the default way the operating system vendors have set up
Hmm.
mobile navigation, which was this whole
Okay.
idea. If you've ever seen, you've used an iOS app and you hit a button and you might see the
Yeah.
screen wipe to the side or you might see it pop up from the bottom, but there's
Yeah.
something underneath it. So every screen, unless you explicitly say to reset the navigation stack,
Okay.
every screen that you continue to pop will put a new screen on top. And that's why, like, say you're in the Twitter
Oh,
app
okay.
or
Okay.
X app or whatever the heck we call it now, and you click on somebody's tweet, and then you tap on a reply to that tweet, and you tap on a reply to that tweet. Remember that meme where you people used to go, they would quote tweet somebody and they would say like, "Oh, I can't believe he said that." And like the
Yeah.
quote
Yeah.
tweet would have like something in that, and you would just keep going infinite layers deep. And if you navigated all those infinite layers on mobile, you would have like 25 things in the stack before you realize that like there was nothing
Okay.
to find here, and you'd have to go like 25 screens back. That's just how mobile works, apparently.
Okay. And
um,
okay. And is that something you have to manage in terms of like cuz like obviously like I guess I can't picture a mobile app having like a million pages or anything, but like what I mean, like does the stack get managed by itself? Like if I don't know, like say my phone can only handle, I don't know, I'm just making theoreticals here, but say I can only have like 10 pages, so like 10 on the stack, and then when I hit 11 like my phone crashes. Does React Native or iOS under the hood manage that, or is that just something as a developer you need to be aware of?
There is like some lazy loading features built into React Navigation. I'm not sure how they're affected by that precise issue.
Okay.
In terms of like practical performance, the biggest thing I've run into is that, React components, we have the whole concept where they're like mounted. And so
Hmm.
if every time you put a screen up, you're mounting that screen component. And then when you put a second
Yeah.
screen on top of the first screen, now you have two components mounted. If you have any side effects that are related to that screen being mounted, like say you're loading an API, or you're refreshing it at certain intervals, you have to
Yeah.
be aware that those things could be running twice. So
Okay.
a lot of like things like I think probably TanSpec query, if you build things around like that, like more modern patterns, you'll
Yeah.
probably be okay. I think those are a little bit smarter about that stuff. But I used to run into issues where I would refresh one piece of data, and I
Okay.
had like 8 screens below it listening to that same thing, and it was trying to
Okay.
render
Okay.
some complex SVG graph based on that. And SVGs go an order of magnitude slower on Android if you put too many of them on the screen, just because it uses like bitmap caches to do it. It's weird.
Okay.
Um, so I ran into performance issues. I would every once in a while pull out my really old Android phone, my Moto G4 Play from 2012 or something,
Allo
and I
Moto.
would watch my app. I would watch this app just go to absolute sludge, and then I would put in. Since I'm a basic developer, I would put in little console logs, and I would see that 65 screens are re-rendering every time that data changes. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. No, you're right. With something like React Query and stuff, like it caches it unless it really needs to go fetch it again. So, okay. But yeah, no, I was just curious in general. Like, again, just because I'm not as familiar with the mobile development landscape. Um, but cool, cool, cool. Um, I guess we haven't touched on it yet, but like we've looked at file-based routing. We can load pages and stuff, and maybe we can link to your talk, the freaky fast one there. But so like these are layouts and pages right now. but I imagine like something like Next.js or other frameworks, you can also do API routes in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me actually give you a link to, and we might even be able to get a hello world out here, real quick.
Okay. Cool.
I have I ended up branding this workshop differently, but I have my
Okay.
master class from React Miami. And secret about my workshops, and I probably should just post these somewhere. If you get the lessons, you could do the workshop yourself. You don't need someone like me to tell you what to do.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They're all pretty explicitly written out there. And this workshop actually takes you through a demo app I created with Expo Router and API routes. And
Okay.
it was to do a very simple like favorite a piece of art.
Okay.
And yeah, actually, you could probably just try running this. Actually, might be pretty compelling here.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Okay. I can go grab my fork here. So let's just copy that. 2 seconds here. Let's just stop this app for now and let's go down there. Let's do clone that to Miami Masterclass. Okay. What's it? Oh, Miami. Sorry.
oh, oh yeah, there you go.
Okay, there we go.
And
And
then
let's just
run. Oh yeah, you got a code in there. Yeah, yeah. And just
cool.
npm it, and then run npx expo start.
Okay. All right. Let's just get the node modules set up. And also, side note, but this
Yeah,
is the beauty of having stuff in open source. It's one of the reasons why I like working in open source. It's like, obviously, you gave this master class at React Miami, but you're also kind enough to open source this for people to learn. And this is something. It is like nothing to do with React Native or Expo, but it's it's always cool, I find, where it's like, how does this thing work, or why is this breaking? And if it's open source, you literally have the code. Like I remember running into an
yeah,
issue with Webpack at one point, and I was like knee deep in debugging in Webpack code, but I was able to do that because it was open source, you know. Whereas if it was closed source, I'd just be like, okay, I log some errors and I'll call support, I guess. Obviously, you could still, file an issue and stuff, but that's just kind of one of the cool things I think, like. You're obviously well versed in React Native Expo, so like the fact that you have this out here, it's a great learning tool. So
one of
okay.
my favorite things is somebody asks a question. I'm like, oh, I have a repo for that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and run Expo start here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
do you want me to go in the
Go ahead and for
simulator?
maybe simplicities, just go for web. We'll
Yeah,
keep
cool,
it simple here.
cool.
So one thing, if you head back to the terminal here, you can probably see that little like lambda guy,
Yeah,
or I think. Oh wait, I forget which one's which. Maybe that's the wrong one. Um, one of these is actually. Oh, maybe it's afterwards. One of these is actually going to compile the backend API. I
okay.
forget. Maybe it is the lambda. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
could
it is. No, oh,
be.
Node render JS. Yeah, maybe that is it. Okay. So anyway, what's going on in here? If you go back to the routes, number one, this is
Okay,
my app. It's called Art Thing. It's a slice of the Cleveland Institute of Art Museum
okay.
Open API, and you can favorite. The artwork comes from their API, and the favoriting feature is actually saved to a JSON file in the Node server.
Oh, cool.
So you can see. Let's find the API routes in here. Oh, you
Okay.
know what? I just realized. I just realized we're on the wrong branch
Oh,
because this
okay.
was the master class. Switch to the
Okay, yeah.
final branch. There should be a O3 branch.
Okay. Let's see here. G fetch. GB. No, I don't have G checkout. Let's actually go look on the web because I actually
Yeah,
don't
I
know how.
can't remember what they're
I,
called.
I don't know how to find the branch name in the terminal.
Yeah.
But when I have them locally, I know how to look. But okay, so we got. Oops, sorry here. View all branches. Oh, it's
Oh
because I
wait, it might
didn't.
have only cloned me. Oh
Yeah. That
nah.
no, that's a default thing. But we can go back. We still got time.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, let's just clone this one. Let's just stop here. Boom, boom, boom. Trash. Okay. Finish
I
him.
was like, why
There
don't
we
I
go.
see all the API routes? And I'm like, oh yeah, they're not in this one.
Okay, cool. And while that's just pulling down, so you said it was
Yeah, it should
called
be
which?
the O3 API route solution.
Okay, cool. O3 dash API route solution. Okay. All right. Miami. Get checkout O3 dash API route solution. Okay, cool. Let's try that one more time. Um, this will be a nice way to finish things off. We got about 7 minutes, so we're like not in the pressure cooker because I'm not really stressed out, but this will just end up finishing off nicely this way. Okay, so let's do Expo start again, and we'll do web like you said, just for simplicity. And let's
Here it goes.
uh, opened up on my other browser off the screen, so just there we go. Just let that load up. Okay, so we're back in
There you go.
business.
So I think I stuck some console logs in here that you might see if you do something. So go to into an exhibit.
Okay,
Uh,
and let's just I'm just gonna move this up a bit. Oh, you can't. Oh, normally you can usually press enter to change, get some white space in there. But all right, let's go ahead and click on one. Okay.
and then yeah,
And,
go pick a piece of art.
all right, let's go for Stag at Sharkies. Okay. There we go.
Oh, and you
Okay.
notice right there it showed bundled. So it actually
Yeah.
bundles the API route just in time, and they're all like little mini bundles on their own. So there's fave
Okay.
plus API. This is how you make an API route. You put a file inside the router tree, and you put plus API, and that
Okay.
makes it a backend thing. So if you like go to works ID
Okay.
fave plus API, you'll
Okay.
be able to see I made my little database, which is my little JSON file processor. We don't have to interrogate my database too much. It's not very good,
Yeah.
but you can see it's reading a request. It's got a get. It's got a post. You export get, you get a getter. You export
Okay.
post, you get a post. Um, it's got a little layer inside the client code that's just using Tanset query around basic HTML, fetch API,
Okay.
and it's reading search params, it's reading bodies, and it's doing basic web stuff. It's
No,
saving to the
that's cool.
database and outputting a result. So it's
Okay.
very simple to use. You don't have to spin up an extra server, and it's just like for me as a front end guy who just gets befuddled by back end stuff, I just love the prototyping potential. I mean, it's got potential, of course, beyond prototyping, but to be able to
Yeah.
like get that much closer to like so many ideas require a server, and to be able
Yeah.
to just with that little effort get a server going is
Yeah.
really
No,
cool.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so
So I
you
get.
should be able to star to star the artwork, and it should actually save.
Okay. Yeah. So let's go ahead here. I'll just bring this over. So if I click star, is that it? Oh no, that's my favorite. Sorry, that's the. Whoops. I'm going all the wrong places here. Sorry. Let's go back. Come here. Let's go to stag it. Okay, I meant to start down here. Okay.
There we go. And now if you hit the star back above, I guess I probably took the console logs out. But anyway,
Yeah.
if you hit the star over there, it saves to the API. And then if you hit the
Okay.
star over here, it goes back and reads all your favorites. So just a very
Okay.
simple example that shows some basic gets and posts
Yeah. Yeah. No, this
with
is
the
super cool.
API routes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify again what you said before. So if I want to create an API route, it always has to end with plus API and then
Yep.
.ts or .js. Is that right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And it doesn't matter where we put it. Like obviously you'll probably organize things in a certain way, but like if for example I put fave plus api.ts under department, like I would still be able to call it. It might structurally it looks kind of weird that I put it there, but it would still work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We just have to change the
Okay.
URL. And in this case, it kind of fits in there nice, of course, because you can access all the segments of the URL. So I can access the ID. So I can be like, oh, you're favoriting that artwork based on ID.
Okay. Cool. And I guess last question I have about the routes, or like even like the file based routing. I get that like when you ship your app, that's gonna be in the app. Do the API routes ship in the app too, or is that something that deploys somewhere else, or is it all bundled together?
That that deploys to the website. So you would deploy this
Okay.
as kind of like basically a universal app. You could technically just do the back end plus your mobile app, but
Okay.
it's kind of intended like you have a website and a mobile app, and they all point to the same API. If you go into the app.json,
Okay.
which is kind of like a Expo control file, it has like a lot of base Expo properties for building your app, you should scroll down a little bit and find
Oh,
a
web here. Okay.
so yeah, there is Expo Router Origin. So right now that's just a like a placeholder URL. But actually, if you go in my master class, if you go to the deploy lesson, um,
Okay.
and there's also yeah, bonus deploy there. I actually describe how I deployed this to Fly.io.
Okay.
Um, so
Okay. So
I
yes.
basically had to do the Express.js option because I basically accidentally made a server full app because
Okay.
I'm just not very good at servers because the database is a JSON file on the hard disk.
Okay.
So I picked that way, but I describe how to do it. There's also options for Vercel and Netlify in our docs as well.
So that answers my question. Basically, the route should be deployed with the website, or you could, like you said, just have like an API endpoint, uh, a site that just is all your routes for APIs.
Right.
But
Yeah. You would
it's a
basically just
separate
like
thing. Okay.
nuke the front end site at that point. You just be like, oh, you don't see anything on web.
Okay. 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 Yeah. No, that's just what I wasn't sure about. I wasn't sure if that part actually shipped in the app that ends up on somebody's phone, or if it was a separate thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay. No, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Uh, well, we're like at 2:29 p.m. my time, which leaves us with 1 minute to wrap up here, pretty much, because I do want to be respectful of your time. Let me bring us back to the chatting view. Uh, yeah, this was super awesome. I love just hearing a bit more about some of the pieces in the Expo project, and the Expo router seems pretty compelling if you want to one build a native app, but also yeah, I was really curious about the whole universal app. It sounds like it's a pretty solid solution though, and like
Yeah, there's
if
definitely
you
big sites using it. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, the only one I know of, just because I think Dan Abramov tweeted it, was the Blue Sky one, but I'm sure there's others. But no, that's super cool. And yeah, I think it'd be awesome, like maybe sometime in the fall or later on, if we did that another stream, if you're up for it, like just about the whole testing experience with getting the certificates set up and stuff, just to I guess help, because like not that this wasn't a real world kind of what we were talking about, but the testing's another piece of it. So I think that would be super beneficial for folks
Yeah, yeah, that'd be
to
cool.
dig into.
Good time for me to brush up on Maestro. So if
Cool, cool, cool.
I can line up with
And
something I need to learn better.
cool, cool, awesome. And I'll share all those links in the recordings, so it'll be up on YouTube, and I'll share them in Twitch too. And I guess anything else you wanted to mention before we head off, Keith?
Hey, yeah. In terms of expo stuff, you could see me on. I'm on the Discord. I'm Keith in the Discord. We do a weekly office hours every Wednesday at 12 p.m. PST. We also have an
Okay.
expo live stream, and this month I'm actually hosting a bunch of people over the next month and a half. We're talking
Oh,
about
no way.
styling in React Native, different solutions from
Okay.
frameworks and libraries to plain old style sheets. So check out Expo on YouTube and subscribe for upcoming live streams, and you'll get to hear me talk more to much smarter
Yeah.
people though on the other side.
uh, I'll definitely check that out, because I've heard of like, well, lib UI libraries like Tamaguchi, and there's Native Wind, like Tailwind,
Yeah,
like
yeah, we
um
should be talking about both of those actually.
okay, cool, cool, awesome.
Tamagui.
Yeah,
Tamaguchi sounds kind of fun though.
yeah, no, sorry,
Like a
Tamaguchi is that thing where
Gucci
you
bag of
yeah,
it's like a stylish handbag of UI
yeah.
libraries.
Cool, cool. Well, thanks everybody for hanging in the chat today. Thanks for all the questions and the support as always. Uh, next week, next Monday, I'll drop the schedule, but I'm going to be hanging with Colby Fayok from Cloudinary, and we're going to be digging into building out some OG images and some other goodies. So check that out. And yeah, see you next week, folks. And Keith, if you don't mind, just staying on 1 sec, and everybody
Yeah,
else, we'll see
absolutely.
you in the next one.
Bye bye.